All right, so I wanted to just talk through the concepts of libraries or modules in Python, and how we interact with them and whatnot. So as an example here, I'm just going to use the math module. So first off, there are some modules or libraries that that ship with Python kind of natively that you don't have to install yourself or add on to your environments. So math is an example, OS is another example. And then there are other libraries or modules that you need to download or install into an environment, and we cover that in other videos. So for example, if you want to use NumPy or Pandas, those libraries or modules are not included with Python natively, so they have to be installed. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about the process of using these. So first off, the term different environments use different terms for kind of the add-ons or extensions. So for example, if you're a GIS person, you use ArcGIS. A lot of the add-ons are called extensions, like the Spatial Analytics extension. If you work in R, we generally call the add-ons packages. So like the caret package or the ggplot2 package or something. In Python, generally the term module or library are used. Libraries, generally, if you have a collection of modules that all kind of work together, and the modules are just like kind of singular, but those terms aren't used consistently all the time, and sometimes you hear people say package. Yeah, so anyway, it's a little inconsistent. But again, generally a module is kind of a single set of like functions and methods and tools, and a library would be a bunch of modules that are kind of linked together. Okay, so let's look at how we interact with modules. So again, math is built in, so you don't have to like install it. To use a module, you have to import it. So you can do import math to import the math module, and then once you've done that, you can use whatever methods or functions or tools or whatever are made available by that module. So here I'm using some of these different math operations that are provided by the math module. Note the need here is that, or note the syntax here. So we're calling the math module and then dot and then the specific function that we're getting from that module. Note if you hover over this in VS Code, it'll tell you what this is. So this module provides access to mathematical functions defined by the C standard, and if you hover over one of these functions, it'll tell you about the function. So it returns the cosine of x in radians. Alright, so it's the name of the module, dot, then the function, and then its arguments. And then that just performs those mathematical operations on the number associated with the variable x. Okay, so when you import a library or a module into Python, sometimes it's common to assign an alias. So that's what this as keyword does. So import math as m. So basically we're calling math m, and so now in the code, instead of having to write out math, we can just simply write m instead. So that's what this, again, as m does. You're just basically giving it an alias name that you can use in the code. So m is referencing math, and then again, this is a function coming from the math module. But other than that, the code's the same. We just replaced math with m because of this assignment. But everything else works the same. If you want to not have to call in or use the module or library name, then you can do from math import asterisk, which is basically just going to import everything, and then you don't have to again call it. Generally, you don't want to do that unless it's a smaller library or smaller module. But when you do it, when you use this method, you don't have to you don't have to use the module or library name. So we don't have to write math or m. We can just call the function. But that can eat some memory, so that's generally maybe not the best option. So I generally try not to do that unless it's something small, when there's just not a lot of, say, functions that are made available. And then another option is that you can just call in specific functions from a library or a module. So to do that, you're just going to do from math, so from the module or library, and then import keyword, and then the list of different functions you want to call in. So here we can use the same syntax we did above, where we don't have to use the name or alias name for the module. So it would be like the same syntax as we had here, but we're only doing that for these two. So if I tried to use a different function, it wouldn't work. So that's common, especially if you're just going to use the same function a lot and just want to make your code a little more concise or easier to read. This can get more complicated. So for example, you can actually build your own Python modules and libraries, and you can reference those in different code and whatnot. We're not going to look at that. That's more of I would say an intermediate topic, so we're not going to look at that here. But if you did make your own module, then you could use the same importing methods, import my module as mine or something, right? And then use the functions that you created in some other code or in a different notebook or something.